Over the past few years, South Africa has seen the growth of a movement fueled by the slogan, "Put South Africans First." One segment of the movement is a group called Operation Dudula. It's been raiding small businesses owned by immigrants from other African countries since 2021. Dudula is a Zulu word that roughly means to push back.
Dudula is a place where you are here to fight for the future of the current and future South African.
The group has entered hospitals to prevent immigrants getting care. In Soweto, once the epicenter of anti-apartheid resistance, the group has even gone into schools seeking to stop immigrant children from enrolling. But Dudula is just the latest iteration of xenophobic violence in South Africa, going back many years. And it's not just explicitly xenophobic movements giving migrants cause for anxiety. All 10 parties that form South Africa's current government all campaigned on curbing migration. So why has South Africa seemingly closed its doors to the rest of the continent over the years? And is there any hope that things can shift back? Let's take a look back at the end of the struggle against apartheid. Back then, the party of Nelson Mandela himself, the African National Congress or ANC, still saw South Africa's fate intertwined with other African countries.
The future of this country does indeed, to a very significant extent, depend on what happens in the rest of the continent.
But recently, the ANC has spoken more skeptically about the country's immigration laws.
Pan-Africanism does not mean entering each other's country illegally. It doesn't. And this issue of borderless Africa, I don't know where it came from.
Over the last few years, other parties have begun scapegoating immigrants even more explicitly.
The devil sent other devils here to this country to come and sell drugs to our children, to come and sell body parts of our people, to come and take the jobs of South Africans.
By the way, after South Africa's 2024 election, Patriotic Alliance leader Gayton McKenzie became a minister in the ANC's unity government. South Africa's constitution, written and implemented after the fall of the apartheid regime in the 1990s, actually offers major protections to migrants. It guarantees freedom of movement, education, and healthcare, even to people who aren't citizens. That made it an attractive destination for people fleeing poverty and instability across the continent. To get more insight into why South Africa has shifted away from these constitutional principles, we spoke to New School professor Sean Jacobs, founder of the publication Africa is a Country. Jacobs grew up in South Africa. He says that the constitution reflects where the country and the ANC stood politically at the time of its writing.
And the struggle was it was very expansive in who it's understood to be a member of the South African community. And then I think also it was like a honeymoon period. It's like this, it's just first, I was around for that, I was in my 20s. It's like an incredible feeling to be witnessing like a new country emerging, and it's almost like everything goes.
Jacobs says that the new constitution's liberal attitude toward freedom of movement stemmed from the experience of the ANC.
Mandela had gone to, before he went to jail, he traveled to like Ethiopia, he went to Morocco, I think, and he went to Tunisia. He understood that we're going to get help from other Africans, and hopefully one day we can reciprocate.
In the late 90s, South Africa's status as a stable, middle-income country began to attract a diverse set of immigrants across the economic spectrum. In this period, South Africa also built closer economic ties with the rest of the continent, leading to more immigration from those countries in particular. Today, estimates put the number of immigrants in South Africa at around 2.5 million. The largest country of origin is Zimbabwe. Around a quarter of South Africa's foreign-born population hails from that country. Mozambique, Lesotho, and Malawi also contribute significantly to the immigrant population. South Africa is consistently named the top destination for migrants from other African countries, especially its neighbours in the southern half of the continent. In the late 90s, a campaign of attacks on immigrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Malawi, known as Operation Dudula, ousted immigrants from their homes in Alexandra, a township just outside Johannesburg.
Apartheid is over. You have Nigerians, Zambians or whoever say to South Africans, we participated and helped you in your struggle. Why are you chasing us out now? Because they assumed that the South Africans had this expansive, outward-looking worldview. But South Africa, white and black, is a very parochial country.
But in spite of these attitudes, it's important to place migration to South Africa within a global context. First, in 2000, South Africa experienced a major influx of immigrants after Zimbabwe's political and economic situation collapsed. That's partially how some 1 million people of Zimbabwean origin came to reside in South Africa today. In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, countries all over the world began to see an influx in migration and a rise in income inequality. In a story quite familiar to those in the global north, these trends led to the rise of right-wing xenophobic political movements. But the global south has seen levels of migration that go largely unreported in the global north. In fact, the median distance travelled by modern migrants is less than 400 miles, meaning that most migrants wind up in neighbouring countries. The economic choices being made by the ANC during the country's current neoliberal period mirror the policies that have exacerbated inequality around the world.
There's 94 till roughly 99, in which there's this kind of very generous immigration policy, but it's also the moment at which the South African government kind of moves to the right economically. And then Mbeki actually takes over as president in 99, and he implements an economic program that is straight up neoliberal.
So when we're saying it's important to cut down these budget deficits, to bring them to manageable levels, the argument was that no, but why are you doing that? In order to impact on poverty, on building of houses and clinics and roads and all of these things. So we needed more resources, but the way to get those resources was not by borrowing.
They had government policy called GEAR, which the framework was, we believe that investment will get us there, it will trickle down. They're being told, don't interfere in the economy. They're told, sell off, national assets, privatize state-owned corporations.
In fact, in 2022, the World Bank named South Africa the most unequal country in the world. Post-COVID, the government has only doubled down on policies that have failed to stimulate growth and further impoverished many South Africans. Today, the country's unemployment rate sits at a staggering 33%.
Many of those people, sometimes most of their income come from public services, whether it's grants, income, healthcare, housing, it's government services. They perceive now that they are competing for those services with somebody else who they feel doesn't have the rights that they have. Like, those people didn't vote. Why are they getting rights? I think that's sort of the cauldron in which that happens.
And so, in the 2024 election, a surge in migration from Zimbabwe at the start of that year would later be exploited by South Africa's right-wing parties, like the Patriotic Alliance. They campaigned on policies like building a border wall between the country and Zimbabwe, as well as securing and closing the country's borders at large.
The ANC was always considered, after the end of apartheid, as sort of the custodian of people's dreams, aspirations. And for the most part, it was reflected in election results. Nobody questioned their ability to govern South Africa. Even though they had moved to the right economically, nothing had happened to the inequality in society.
But South Africa's inequality still has a racial dimension 3 decades after the end of apartheid. For example, when the country's unemployment rate is divided by race, black South Africans face an unemployment rate of around 37%, while white South Africans only see a rate of about 8%. But black South Africans have largely not directed their anger toward this inequality.
These small breakaway parties like the Patriotic Alliance, the Action South Africa, these are black-led political movements.
While civil society groups have begun to organise against Operation Dudula, xenophobia has already begun to influence how South Africa's governing coalition approaches the country's problems. In 2024, a series of fatal food poisoning incidents led to the deaths of school children. An investigation found that pesticides in food served at schools could be the root of the problem. Instead of tackling this issue, officials shifted the blame onto snacks sold at immigrant-owned shops. The coalition government announced new regulations on these shops in November 2024, but this scapegoating has led communities to take it upon themselves to force these shops into closing.
There's an increasing number of political leaders who have been making very concerning public statements about migrants. We've seen the government, for example, suspend and end the Zimbabwean special permit. These are all signs that the state is blaming migrants for the problems in our country.
While South Africa has its own particular situation, migration is a global issue, subject to trends happening on a global scale.
South Africa is no different from like the US or Europe. It's just the targets, the perpetrators and the targets are different.
And when people in the global south look to leave their countries of origin, it's often because these countries are undergoing crises caused by the global north. So until these countries confront these issues and take in their share of migrants, the global south will continue to shoulder more responsibility for taking in their neighbours, particularly regional economic powerhouses like South Africa.